They say you never truly know a person until you've seen them push to their limit. For me, that limit was a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and the person was Ben. We'd been best friends since kindergarten, through awkward phases, terrible haircuts, and enough bad decisions to fill a small library. This particular bad decision started innocent enough. A road trip, just us, my beat-up Civic, and a Spotify playlist that was 80% early 2000s punk pop. Destination? A ridiculously overpriced music festival 3 states over. Ben was driving, naturally, because his sense of direction was only slightly worse than a blindfolded pigeon's, and he swore he knew a shortcut. "Dude, trust me," he'd said, grinning, his hand already turning the wheel off the main highway onto something that looked less like road and more like a suggestion. My cousin's friend's uncle took this once, said it cut like an hour off the trip. I squinted through the dust devils kicked up by our tires. "Your cousin's friend's uncle also said those shrooms he sold you were organic health supplements, Ben. Remember how that ended?" He chuckled, a carefree sound that would later echo in my nightmares, twisted and distorted. "Hey, that was a bonding experience. Besides, look at this, man. Untouched wilderness. Probably see a deer or something." He gestured wildly with one hand, narrowly avoiding a substantial pothole that would have eaten my suspension whole. Think of the Instagram content. As the paved road gave way entirely, replaced by loose gravel and then just packed earth, the trees started crowding in. Not the neat, managed forests you see near highways, but a thick, tangled mess of ancient oaks and weeping willows, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The sunlight, once bright, became dappled and weak as if afraid to penetrate the canopy. The air grew heavy, smelling of damp earth and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet, like spilled pennies left in the rain. "All right, Ben, this is getting a little deliverance-y," I ventured, pulling my phone out. No signal, of course. "How much further is this supposed shortcut?" He shrugged, eyes fixed on the road, which was now barely more than 2 muddy ruts. "Don't know. Not far. See? It's getting darker. We'll be out of the woods before nightfall, definitely." His voice, usually so confident, had a slight edge of forced cheeriness now. Even Ben, the king of blissful ignorance, was starting to feel it. The trees were so dense now that it felt like we were driving through a tunnel, the world outside shrinking to a thin strip of muted gray overhead. I noticed something else, too. Every so often, nailed to a tree trunk or hanging from a low branch, there'd be a small, crudely carved wooden effigy. Not religious crosses, but abstract, jagged shapes, some vaguely humanoid, others just unsettling symbols. They looked like they'd been there for decades, weathered and faded, but somehow still menacing, watching us. "Those are charming," I muttered, pointing at one that looked like a stick figure with too many limbs. "Local folk art? Or a warning sign for no trespassing unless you enjoy ritual sacrifice?" Ben just grunted, gripped the wheel tighter. "Probably just some weird hermits trying to keep people out. Smart, actually. If I had a piece of land this isolated, I'd put up creepy stuff too." He forced a laugh, but it died in his throat. The road narrowed further, and the overhanging branches scraped against the car's roof, a rhythmic grating sound that made my teeth ache. Then, through a sudden break in the trees, we saw it. Not a town, not even a cluster of houses, just a single isolated homestead, a dilapidated farmhouse, its porch sagging, windows dark and vacant like dead eyes, stood in the center of a clearing. Surrounding it were a few smaller outbuildings, a barn, a shed, all leaning at precarious angles as if exhausted. What struck me first was the silence. Total. Absolute. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves. Just the groan of Ben's brakes as he brought the Civic to a halt. "Well," Ben said, his voice unusually quiet. "Looks like we found our shortcut." "More like our dead end," I countered, a chill crawling up my spine. The air here was even heavier, thicker, with that same sickly sweet metallic smell, only stronger now. It was like standing in a slaughterhouse, but without the sound of the animals. "Nobody's lived here for decades, Ben. Let's just turn around." "No, wait," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "Look at that." He pointed to a faint, overgrown track leading past the farmhouse and disappearing into the woods on the other side. "That's got to be the way through. It's just a little rough. Maybe we can loop around the house and see if it looks more passable." Before I could argue, he was out of the car, stretching his legs. "Come on, Alex. Look, it's kinda cool, actually. Like something out of a horror movie. See if we can find some ghost stories for the road." He was trying to sound casual, but his eyes, I noticed, were wide, darting from window to window of the farmhouse. I sighed, defeated. This was classic Ben. Curiosity always trumped common sense. "Fine," I grumbled, stepping out into the oppressive stillness. The ground was oddly soft, a thick layer of damp earth and decaying leaves muffling our footsteps. As we approached the farmhouse, the details became clearer and a lot more disturbing. The paint was peeling off in strips like diseased skin. But it wasn't just neglect. Someone had clearly been here recently. There were fresh-looking scratches on the front door, deep gouges that looked like they'd been made by something with claws, not tools. And the porch swing, though broken, still swayed slightly in a breeze that wasn't there, creaking with a terrible, drawn-out groan. "All right, Scooby-Doo, you've seen your haunted house," I said, trying to inject some levity. "Can we go now, before we get adopted by a family of inbred cannibals?" Ben, however, was already halfway up the porch steps. "No, wait, look at this. It's not just old, it's weird." He pointed to a series of symbols carved into the wooden banister. The same jagged, abstract shapes we'd seen on the trees, but larger, more elaborate. Some looked like distorted human figures, others like animals twisted into unnatural poses. One symbol, repeated over and over, resembled a crude, multi-limbed star. It made me incredibly uncomfortable. The air around the house felt colder, heavier, as if all sound and warmth had been sucked into it. A faint, almost imperceptible buzzing sound reached my ears like 1,000 flies trapped inside a jar, but it was too distant to be sure. "Ben, seriously, this isn't a joke," I said, my voice low. "My gut is screaming at me to get back in the car. This place feels wrong." He ignored me, pushing the front door, which groaned open with a burst of stale, moldy air. A darkness so profound it seemed to absorb light spilled out from inside. "Just a quick peek," he whispered, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Dust motes danced in the light, thick as snow. The room beyond was sparse, an overturned table, a couple of broken chairs. But then the light landed on something in the corner. A large wooden chest, bound with rusted chains, and on top of it, arranged in a crude circle, were several small human-like figures. Not dolls exactly. They were made from dried reeds and twine, but intricately woven, and each had tiny, unmistakable human teeth embedded in its head, like horrifying little crowns. My stomach lurched. "Okay, that's enough peek for me," I said, backing away slowly. We are going back to the car right now." Ben, though clearly shaken, was still mesmerized. "No, wait, listen." He tilted his head, listening intently. The faint buzzing sound was definitely stronger now. It pulsed, a low thrum that vibrated through the floorboards. "What is that?" Before I could answer, a sickening squelch echoed from somewhere deeper within the house. It was a wet, heavy sound, like something large and gelatinous being dragged across a damp floor. Ben's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a sudden dawning horror. The buzzing intensified, changing pitch, raising to a frantic whine, like a swarm of angry wasps. Then through an open doorway at the back of the living room, a flicker of movement. Not a shadow, not an animal. Something pale, something that moved with an unnatural, jerky gait. A silhouette, too tall, too thin. "Oh, fuck," Ben whispered, his voice trembling. "Oh, fuck, Alex, someone's home." He didn't need to tell me twice. We stumbled backward, tripping over each other, a panicked ballet of terror. The squelching sound was closer now, accompanied by a wet, gasping breath. We burst out of the farmhouse, scrambling down the porch steps. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. We lunged for the car, fumbling with the keys. Ben, in his haste, dropped them. They skittered under the Civic. "No, no, no!" he hissed, dropping to his knees. The buzzing inside the house was now a furious roar, and a new sound joined it. A guttural, wet clicking, like bones grinding together. I glanced back at the farmhouse. In the doorway, framed by the suffocating darkness, was the silhouette. It wasn't just tall and thin. It was wrong. Limbs seemed to jut out at impossible angles, and its head, it was lumpy, misshapen, with something that glinted wetly in the faint light. It was coming for us. "Forget the keys, Ben! Run!" I screamed, grabbing his arm and pulling him up. We bolted, not towards the main track, but deeper into the woods, just past the homestead where the fainter, overgrown path led. It was overgrown for a reason. Thorny bushes tore at our clothes, branches slapped our faces, but we didn't stop. The metallic, sickly sweet smell was overpowering here, mixed with something else, something fetid and undeniably organic. The ground gave way beneath our feet more than once, sinking into boggy patches. The buzzing was all around us, not just from the farmhouse, but from the very air, vibrating in my teeth. We ran blindly, propelled by sheer, unadulterated fear. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the thought of that thing, whatever it was, pursuing us, kept me going. Ben, always faster than me, was a few paces ahead, cursing and panting. Then he let out a choked cry. He'd tripped badly. I skidded to a halt, turning back. He was trying to push himself up, his ankle twisted at an unnatural angle. A sickening pop had echoed through the quiet woods. "My ankle! I think it's broken, Alex!" he gasped, his face pale with pain and terror. And then I saw it. Not the thing from the house, but another, or a part of it. Hanging from a low branch, swaying gently, was a human hand. Skinned, delicately preserved. Its fingers were elongated, tipped with sharp black talons, and just beyond it, partially obscured by the undergrowth, was a crude netting, a ghastly tapestry woven from dried leaves, animal bones, and what looked terrifyingly like braided human hair. Trapped within it, struggling weakly, was a deer, its eyes wide with fear, its body already partially transformed. Patches of its fur were gone, replaced by glistening raw flesh, and its antlers had begun to twist into those familiar, grotesque star shapes. The buzzing was deafening now, a cacophony of monstrous insects. I realized it wasn't just inside the house. It was everywhere. Millions of them. Not wasps, not flies. Something bigger, something intelligent. From the trees behind us, a low, wet growl snaked through the air. The silhouette from the farmhouse was closer, and it wasn't alone. 3 of them, maybe 4, were moving through the dense undergrowth, their movements fluid and terrifyingly silent despite their unnatural forms. They were humanoid, but too tall, too gaunt, their skin a sickly gray, stretched taut over bulging muscles and jutting bones. Their heads were misshapen, bulbous, pulsating slightly, and they had no discernible eyes, only dark cavities. But the buzzing, it was emanating from them. Their bodies seemed to be a living hive, the source of the horrific noise. And from their heads, from what should have been their faces, long, segmented proboscises extended, twitching, tasting the air. They were giant bipedal insects, or something that had been human and then consumed, transformed. "Get up, Ben! Now!" I screamed, my voice raw. I tried to pull him, but he was dead weight, his face contorted in agony. The creatures were closing in. One of them, the largest, extended a long, slender arm, adorned with the same sharp talons as the hanging hand. It moved with chilling speed, seizing Ben's good leg. He screamed, a high, desperate sound that was immediately stifled as another one of those things clamped a free limb over his mouth. I couldn't move. I was frozen, watching in horror as Ben struggled, his eyes wide, pleading with me. The things surrounded him, their proboscises weaving through the air, their bodies thrumming with that awful buzz. One of them, its bulbous head twitching, brought its own taloned hand down, cleanly severing Ben's injured leg above the ankle. A geyser of blood erupted, soaking the leaf-strewn ground. Ben's scream was muffled, but the pain in his eyes was vivid, horrifying. The creature then did something even more sickening. It lowered its proboscis to the stump and began to feed. I saw it clear as day. The appendage burrowed into his flesh, and Ben's body spasmed violently. His eyes rolled back in his head, a single tear cutting a path through the dust on his cheek. My vision swam. Bile rose in my throat. I couldn't help him. There were too many. They were too alien. The creatures looked at me then, their featureless heads tilting as if assessing me. I felt the buzzing in my own skull now, a terrible invasive vibration. It wasn't a sound, it was a touch, a presence. They were inside my head. I could almost hear their thoughts, a jumble of primal urges and something else, something cold and clinical. They wanted me, yes, but not like a predator wants prey. They wanted me for something else, something worse. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw it. The netting, the deer still struggling weakly, and beside it, partially hidden by a thick bush, was a crude makeshift cage. Inside, huddled in a corner, was a human figure, a woman. Her eyes were vacant, her skin pale and waxy, but she was alive, and woven into her hair hanging from her ears, her nose, her mouth, were the same segmented insect parts. The same talons, the same raw, glistening flesh that I'd seen on the deer. She was not just a prisoner. She was a host, already being transformed. A terrifying realization slammed into me. Ben wasn't just being killed. He was being prepared. The buzzing inside my head intensified, a dizzying spiral of sound and terror. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, landing hard. The creatures took a collective step forward. no longer rushing, but advancing with a chilling patience. They knew I couldn't escape. Their collective hum seemed to vibrate through the very earth. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. This was it. This was where I became another twisted ornament, another host. But then Ben stirred. His eyes, still unfocused, landed on me, and for a split second I saw it. A flicker of his old self. His mouth, still covered by the creature's limb, tried to form words. His head shook, almost imperceptibly. A desperate, impossible message. Run. That was all I needed. The terror was still there, a cold, crushing weight, but Ben's last impossible gesture had ignited something else, a spark of fury, of desperate, primal survival. I wasn't going to just lie there and let them take me. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in my knee from the fall. My eyes darted around, searching. The overgrown path continued, just barely visible, dipping steeply down into a ravine. It was a leap of faith, a desperate gamble. With a hoarse cry, I threw myself forward, away from the creatures, away from Ben. I plunged into the ravine, tumbling down the rocky, root-choked slope. Branches whipped at my face, stones scraped my skin, but I kept going, propelled by pure adrenaline. I heard the creature's enraged buzzing behind me, growing fainter as I descended. They were too large, too ungainly to follow me quickly down such a treacherous incline. I could still hear Ben's muffled cries, though. Or maybe it was just the ringing in my ears, the echo of his final moments. I landed hard at the bottom, winded, bruised but alive. The path here was even more overgrown, choked with thorny vines and stagnant puddles, but it was there, and it was leading away. I didn't look back. I just ran. I ran until my lungs felt like they would burst, until my legs buckled, until I could no longer hear the buzzing, until the stench of decay began to fade. I ran until the trees thinned out, until I saw a faint gray light filtering through the branches, the promise of an open sky. Hours later, stumbling out of the woods onto a desolate, paved country road, I flagged down a passing truck. The driver, an elderly farmer, took one look at my blood-soaked, torn clothes, my wild eyes, and didn't ask questions. He just drove me to the nearest town, a tiny dot on the map called Havenwood, and dropped me off at the gas station. He probably thought I'd been in a fight, or worse. I didn't correct him. I couldn't. I gave the police a garbled, intentionally vague story about a wrong turn and a car accident, a violent stranger, and running through the woods. They sent a patrol car out to the area I described, but they found nothing. No Civic, no farmhouse, no trace of Ben, just an ordinary, overgrown dirt track that branches off a country road and disappeared into an unremarkable, unkempt patch of forest. They told me it was probably just a delusion, or I was in shock. They said things like that happen sometimes in the wilderness. Missing persons cases, especially when the person involved was troubled, as they put it. Ben, with his history of minor scrapes with the law, was easy to dismiss. I know what I saw. I know what happened. I can still smell that sweet metallic odor, still hear the buzzing in my ears. Sometimes, late at night when the lights are out and the silence is too loud, I feel a phantom vibration in my bones, as if a million tiny legs are crawling just beneath the skin. I never told anyone the full story. Who would believe it? A friend consumed by insectoid horrors in a forgotten homestead? It'd lock me up. But the real horror, the one that keeps me awake, isn't just the memory of what they did to Ben. It's the whisper in my mind, the knowing certainty that I didn't escape completely. That buzzing, that sensation of something inside my head. It never truly left. It's fainter now, a low hum, a subtle pressure behind my eyes. But sometimes when I look in the mirror, I swear I can see the outline of those jagged, multi-limbed star symbols faintly raised on the skin beneath my eyes. And my skin, it feels oddly stretched, and sometimes when I scratch an itch, I pull away a fingernail and swear I see a tiny, glistening, segmented black speck beneath it. And the worst part, my hunger. Lately, it's not for food. It's for something raw, something fresh. And sometimes when I'm alone, I find myself extending my tongue just slightly, tasting the air. And it tastes sweet, metallic, familiar.